What's up, guys? What's up? Another recording of the Four Agreements. So, I have not recorded in a few days. That last bit that I read was a little, I don't know, like, it was helpful, but also it was pretty deep, and I didn't even read a whole lot of it, but I found it to be pretty helpful. I definitely sat on a lot of those ideas for a few days and have been kind of working with my mindset a bit on things here and there, and trying to get into a new schedule, a new routine, trying to like really hone in on kind of what's best for me. Like, I know it's partly like a distraction and avoidance kind of tactic, but at the same time I'm trying to take advantage of it and put in the work and have something to show for it. If I'm not going to focus, it's like might as well. But yeah, so I am so I read, starting on page 21. We're gonna end, where it says page 25, the first agreement, be impeccable with your word. So I didn't start reading that part yet, and there was a blank page between, so I didn't really read that much. So this section it has a title or subtitle, I guess, Prelude to a New Dream. And it basically, the way it talks about kind of an issue that comes from all those core beliefs. There are a couple issues mentioned that basically, when it comes to your own personal power, these agreements that are made with all these other people in our lives get in our way. And so, to kind of break down what it says on those few pages, it basically talks about claiming your personal power, and the way to do this, I don't know, is by breaking the agreements that are based on fear. So a lot of times, people want us to live up to their expectations. And that doesn't mean don't ever help people, don't ever be generous, don't ever be courteous or go out of your way to be giving. That's not what it means at all. But if there's a lot of fear around, like, is this person going to love you still? Is this person going to like you still? Am I obligated to do this or obligated to do that? Like, what is it going to mean? What are they going to interpret this as? If I don't do what they want me to do in the way that they want me to do it, is that going to jeopardize the relationship? If I don't get tickets to a certain event while I'm trying to save money, people might not understand something like that because I'm usually going out to events. And so one thing that I notice happens is, when people finally want to go to an event and do something, maybe they'll hit me up, but it's like, well, maybe I'm in a time period where I'm actually saving. I'm not traveling right now. I'm not going out and doing other stuff, but there is kind of pressure because it's like, well, finally, these people that, never respond to anything are kind of like, oh, like, you can come and do this with us now. Like, I've got this group. And so it's like, I don't want to miss out, but at the same time, it's like, because it is hard to get people together, but it's like, usually I feel like probably over 80% of the time, when I'm ready to go do something, most of the time it's really hard to kind of get, a solid crew. Outside of my normal crews that I do specific activities with, it's kind of hard to expand out to other people because it seems like energetically or financially, they're just not willing to kind of put up the money and time and energy to go do some extraordinary kind of event or something. And I wouldn't say that there's like a deep fear. That's probably on the fun side for me of like minor stressors that's like you know, I might try to find the way to make extra money just so I can go to this thing. And I don't know if it's people pleasing, because at the same time, it's like I do want to see them, I do want to be with them. But it's like, what about all the other events that I've gone to and invited them and they weren't able to do it? But then they're like, well, I can only do it this time, and it's like, well, we haven't hung out in like 8, 9, 10 months, so it's kind of like sometimes it is a little hard when we have that, um, kind of going on. And uh, yeah, like it's not like the worst thing on earth, but it's kind of like it does make me kind of like feel like, okay, like I don't know, it does make me feel some kind of a way that is kind of like I've noticed that happens a lot with people, is that they're never available till they decide they want to be available, but otherwise it's hard to really plan with people. And then it's like, well, you get this one opportunity that they give you to kind of like finally go do something. And for me, it is kind of a little bit stressful, though. It's not even a big deal, but it's like a little bit stressful, because I've noticed that with a lot of people, that it's like, oh, do you want to hang out? Oh, do you want to hang out? I'll be over here, I'll be over there. And another thing is that's different is because I've been off for quite a while now. And so, and been working remotely for like 2 years before. And so, you know, it's been, I guess, a long time, since I've had to have a schedule to work around. And so because I don't have that, I've had a little more wiggle room, but I feel like it's only been a few months worth. I'm talking like the last couple years, it's been like this with quite a few people I know, that it's like, it's almost impossible to plan with them. And then it's like, once they hit me up, then it's like they're available when they're available, and they can't seem to understand why I can't be available when they need me to be available. And it's like, well, you're never available, ever, and I'm usually more available. So it's kind of like one of those weird things. That's kind of the first thing that comes to my mind, because it's June now, and there's all this stuff going on, events and things, and I'm like, man, like, some people keep on with the invitations. Let's do this, let's do that, come visit me here, come do this there. And it's like, okay, like, I can't do all this month. Like, why is everyone coming out of the woodworks in June? Like, like, I've been busy, you know what I mean? Like, now I'm kind of busy, and everyone else is, kicking up their energy to try to do stuff. And I'm like, dude, like, this was when I was going to be saving, I'm saving. Like, during the month of May, I was like, I'm saving, you know. April, May, job applications, doing side gigs, all kinds of stuff. Like, I'm not necessarily trying to, like, go to way too many events and stuff. Like, I do have things in mind for summer, but not like, I've got a lot of flexibility. But anyways, if there is an agreement or multiple agreements that are based in like fear, either if it's FOMO type of fear at the least, or kind of like attachment wise, like, I don't want people thinking that I don't really want to see them or be around them just because I won't go to a concert that they suddenly want to go to, when I've been going to so many shows all this other time and they're never available to do it. It's like, like, I don't know. And I know how it is, like, going places with people and doing stuff, and they kind of do things on their own schedules and stuff. And I'm like, okay, when I think about it, it's like if I drive all the way down to San Diego, you know, um, figure out transportation all the way down to San Diego, go down there, go to this concert. You know, worst case scenario, you know, I'm going to be with people who want to sit in the back somewhere, don't even want to pay attention, don't want to dance, aren't really into the music. Um, and it's like, okay, well, what did I come here for? You know, they want to show up late, they want to leave really early, you know, and it's like they don't even want to be here, you know, versus, you know, people who actually want to go, who I would maybe want to go with. It is a little risky to kind of try to, you know, go to some extra event. But I don't think it's gonna like make me lose friendships if I don't go. Like it's not gonna, you know, negatively impact me if I don't go to what they ask. Um, but something on a more serious end could be something like people pleasing in other areas. Like for me, stuff like these little concerts and things, it's kind of like a little bit to think about, but it's like, like I'm free to go or not, you know, like it's not really that big of a deal. But when it comes to, you know, some of the other stuff that I can be, you know, you know, struggling to have better awareness of, when it comes to some other stuff, you know, it can be things like certain people that I might not have, and it's not a lot of people, but certain people that I might not have, you know, the best of relationship with or the best of communication with, and it makes it so the strain on the relationship is pretty big. You know, you know, I've got some people in my life that, you know, I really have to limit my interactions with. And, you know, it is kind of one of those questions like, do you write the person off and just completely delete them from life? I mean, some of it I've seen get a little bit better, but it's also kind of like, I know that some people have, the people I'm thinking about specifically have a habit of, you know, they're only nice when they want something, you know what I mean? They only engage when they're in need. So that's either if they're in social need or emotional need or, you know, in need for help with some kind of task they're trying to do that they don't want to do, that they want to push off onto somebody else or things like that. You know, I've got some people in my life that kind of just, they're completely unengaged, you know, unless they are wanting to complain about their hardships so that somebody can listen to them. They don't really seem to want too much of, you know, friendship or a relationship. They don't really want to, it's not like give and take, it's more like they want to take. And so just the emotional vampire types of people, they can be really challenging to kind of be, you know, having a connection with. It's sometimes hard to kind of connect with them. And part of me thinks maybe they consciously don't want a connection. I don't know. That might be what it is. I'm not too sure. But yeah, part of me kind of thinks that way. You know, but yeah, there's kind of a stuff like that I'm like, okay, like there's all these agreements in place where it's like, you know, you can't really speak your mind around certain people or else they're gonna, you know, create some uncomfortable, stressful situation or, you know, you kind of have to tiptoe. Like those types of people, like I'm not really into that kind of thing because it's like when it leads a situation so that I can't be authentic and just like speak my mind about something, like I'm not like off the rails just like saying all kinds of nonsense to people. It's like, but it's kind of like, okay, like, well, if I can't really, like, to me authenticity is, when I can actually share what's going on in my life as far as activities I'm doing or what I'm thinking or feeling, and for someone else to not just fully feel like they need to kind of jump in and like knock things down, either my ideas or my beliefs or just the choices I'm making. Like, I'm not saying that people need to always support me or need to always agree with what I'm saying, but for me, it's kind of like whenever there's a type of person who wants to just debate everything, I'm not into that. I'm not into the whole like let's just debate things to death, because they want me to see things as their point of view and not really allowing me to have my point of view. Um, you know, I mean, there was somebody the other day who I know who's very argumentative. Who, we're not really going to be talking that much anymore. In all honesty, I've tried with them, but I'm kind of like, I'm kind of over it. But they started saying things like, because I wouldn't say that I fully believe in the Western medical model as like the only way to do things, because I don't. But um, they kind of don't really have a good understanding about stuff, about the mind and psychology in general, and usually that's a little troubling. Like, people can come from different perspectives. I'm not saying people can't believe in crystals or can't believe in psychics or can't believe in their spiritual beliefs. Like, that's fine. You don't have to believe in modern psychology. um but I find it a little troubling when people kind of don't believe that certain people have some form of, you know, an illness or problem, and, professionals can help them with it. Um, like, I'm not saying that people need to believe in going to modern doctors. But I do think, when people need help, it's important for them to be able to at least consult somebody. There's something to the process of yes, you're independent and powerful on your own. If you're stranded out somewhere, willpower and that kind of thing is very powerful, makes a person super resilient. Like, we've all heard of stories of people surviving plane crashes in the ocean for like a month, or, um, you know, having to climb over a mountain to like get to some village for help in like really snowy, stormy conditions, or things that are like, okay, this is definitely not ideal, and it's like someone got to a superhuman level just purely off of mindset. Like, it's not like they were like training, or maybe even they were training to do these types of things, so maybe at least on their end, on their side, they had some kind of knowledge. But it's like, we've all heard those stories where it's like, willpower definitely is important. But I don't really think I believe that like completely socially isolating on a problem is the best, all the time for everybody. I do think a lot of issues do stem from, some form of like lack of social support, social interactions, quality, social people being around. Um, I don't know, and it's kind of, sometimes it's like, okay, you gotta kind of look at the big picture things, and it's kind of hard for me to think, to to kind of want to be around people who don't really care for their health, people who are like incredibly negative all the time, and just, you know, just constantly just like a negative perspective of the world all the time. Like, to me, that's kind of like, okay, like, why are we even talking? You know what I mean? It's like, I don't want to listen to what this person has to say about all their negative opinions about every single type, like their bosses, every boss that they have, there's some kind of issue. They've got some kind of issues with authority. You know, there's always some kind of issues going on. And they've got this negative view of the world. And it's kind of like, I'm starting to see more like, okay, why, you know, they're meeting. I'm not saying I'm blaming them for it, but it's like, well, if you think about people in this way all the time, you know, that energy kind of comes across. And, you know, this person constantly sends me like their stream of consciousness type of thinking about, you know, different topics, you know, about the world and whatnot. And it's always just like some bleak, negative, like outlook of like, you know, all these different types of people that seem to be like out to get this person. And I'm kind of like, every time I read a message, it's either some weird comedy, like comedic kind of like off color, kind of like weird joke, or, you know, it's this other like things about like fear and pain and suffering and like leadership and things like that, where I'm just kind of like, okay, like, you know, like, and so whenever I read it, like, I'll pick it up and I'll have like 18 missed messages, and it's like, oh, it's like these, I have to scroll through all these messages, and each message starts with some like negative thing, and I'm like, I don't really need that. But, you know, it can definitely be hard to kind of, you know, not let somebody drain your energy. Like, you know, for me, I do sometimes start feeling bad for people, and I'm like, oh, I know this person has no friends, and I'm kind of their only friend, and so I'll reach back out to them, even if it's like 6 months later or something. But with this person, I'm kind of like, you know what, I don't really need them in my life. Like, I don't see what I would need from them. And you know, they gravitate towards me because I listen to them and things, but I'm kind of not really in a place where I need to spend energy listening to them at the moment. But things like that, you know, I would say, you know, this person kind of has almost like an expectation for me to be talking about these, you know, their negative views on all kinds of stuff all the time. And I'm kind of just like, dude, like, I don't really want to talk about it. Like, I don't really see the need to like, I'm just waking up in the morning. I'm not trying to read like multiple messages about this person's negative perspective about everything, you know, like, I don't get anything out of it. And so I'm kind of like, oh, what are we doing here, you know? But that's kind of how I would say are like agreements on fear. Like, we kind of all have people or situations where it's like, usually it's attached to people though, where there's these expected kind of ways of interacting with them, you know. If you have a boss that's always yelling at you, you know, or gaslighting you, and they feel like they should be able to do that even though it's harmful and hurtful to you, but they might feel like, I'm entitled to be able to like hurt people because I'm the one in charge, so I can yell and scream, you know. I had someone who was, yeah, I don't know what their role was, but basically they were higher up than I was for a while, and I could tell they hated working at that place. And you know, one day, like years later, after I've been probably working with this person maybe 4 years or something, you know, I was in the kitchen at work with a few people in the eating area, heating up my food, and, you know, one of my work friends was like, "Oh, like, were you ever scared of this person because of like," and she was right there, like, "Were you ever scared of this person because of how she acted or whatever?" And she tried to call me out, being like, "Oh yeah, you were like slow with all this stuff," and like she was trying to like, um, you know, um, make a point for her, how she was treating me about things or whatever. And yeah, I remember her being kind of like, "Yeah, because you were really slow," and I'm like, well, I'm still just as slow as I used to be. I haven't sped up the process, and like yelling's not going to do any good. If you're going to keep calling me, just ask me questions, you're kind of just interrupting me. Like she would call and call and call and like harass me to try to get things done faster. But it's like, do you want me to do it fast and bad so that you have to edit things and make it so it's going to take so much longer for me to go back and edit? Or do you want me to turn it in better, but a little bit later, so that you have less to edit and then less to go back and review again? It's kind of like, to me, it made more sense to spend a little more time because I just wasn't able to write it up that fast. Because they wanted so much information, and I'm like, okay, like, do you guys want this work to be good quality? And like, there is a liability factor if we're not really tending to all these like risk issues and stuff. I was trying to tell them too. I'm like, you guys, like, you'd rather have me not read the past records. Like, I would read the past information about meds, about trauma, about hospitalizations. Not every single detail of every single thing, but it was like, I want to at least know the risk parts, you know what I mean? And so, I would take a lot of time to read that. And these are people who have been in the system for years. And so a lot of times they had histories, like if they were in their 40s or so, they had a history of going into therapy or psychiatrist appointments and things since they were like 14 or something. And so it's like, of course it's going to take me a while to review this, meaning that I'm going to start with the client a little bit later, but at least I'll be going in with information and then doing the write-up, and turning that in maybe 20 minutes after the time that the person needed to actually like edit it. And then, because they had this process that was so ridiculous, it's like, well, you want me to finish something in the same amount of time when you go through and edit a bunch of stuff, and when I give it to you, you have all these edits for me to go back and change. And this wasn't like a word processor program. This is like some weird, medical, it's an EHR like software that's just like crappy and old with these little teeny tiny boxes. And in these teeny tiny thin boxes, let's say it's like about an inch on the screen, an inch tall of a box that you have to write like probably 10 pages worth of paragraphs, multiple paragraphs, crammed into that little box. So every time I went back to edit, it's like, okay, if I need edits on paragraph 3, I'm scrolling down in this little box, trying to scroll down to paragraph 3. And it's like, the way the software was built, it's like, you can't do this fast. You know what I mean? And you got people calling you, and she called to like yell at me on the phone and stuff. And I'm just like, look, like in my head, I'm like, look, this gets done anyways. At the end of every day, you're stressing out, and it's like, yeah, we need this for the doctor, but if you want it to be good enough quality, you're going to have to hold your horses. And it was like this at least a couple times a week, every single week. And, it just wasn't regulated. Like, nobody was really looking at these people who are in charge of us and just letting us treat us however they wanted to. And, so I called her out on it. And this guy was asking me, oh, were you ever scared of her? And I was like, I don't know if I would call it scared, but, she definitely had anger issues. And I said that, because at first I was like, I wasn't going to answer the question. And then they're like, no, you should answer. Come on, you should answer. And then she told me to answer. So I'm like, well, if you want me to answer, I'll do it. And so I gave the answer. And like, this is at a job where I hardly ever talked. People didn't really know my opinions about anybody or anything. I just kind of kept to myself. Well, I socialized, but it was very like, I was never talking crap about the bosses or talking crap about anything. I just didn't, I don't know, I didn't really like how a lot of things were going. And, yeah, so, shortly after that time, I was out and about, kind of, or out on town somewhere, like with some friends or something. And she had contacted me, because I guess, I sent some information about like where I was going that night or something, and then she happened to be in the area, but I saw her message maybe 30 minutes later, and I was like, "Oh, sorry, I'm out with a friend and I'm doing something else, and I'm trying to find where my friend went or whatever." And I was like, not really trying to prioritize this lady. Um, I didn't really care. So yeah, that was one thing that I kind of realized, where I was kind of like, um, uh, needing to kind of stand up for myself for sure, needing to kind of get things together on my end as far as like what I needed for myself, and talk, kind of be able to kind of explain, that what was happening wasn't okay. But it's like earlier when it was happening, like years before that, like I wasn't allowed to like say anything because like I was new on the job, like it was normal in that field to have a bunch of shitty people who were kind of in charge of you, who basically had massive anger control issues and hated their jobs and didn't like what they were doing, and so they take it out on everybody else. And that was kind of considered okay. And so things like that, where it's like you get into these things where it's like, it's not like fully okay, but the person is trying to, um like, it's not okay, but the person is trying to kind of get you to do something the way that they want you or need you to do it, even though, um, the way they're going about it is completely wrong and inappropriate. But they're still going to think that they're right on it. Um, and um, yeah, it mentions like basically, gravitating toward agreements based in love to expend less energy. Like there are definitely people who, I have in my life who, I can be authentic with. They kind of promote like a good safe space for people to kind of express themselves and have experiences and talk about them, and they're not judgmental about it or anything. Um, and with personal power, that's basically talking about that we can change the agreements when we are ready. So there's this quote that I liked. Uh, it says, "Each time you break an agreement, all the power you used to create it returns to you." So it's kind of like when you have energy vampires or any kind of, toxic work situation, things like that. Imagine, you go against what this agreement is. You go against, okay, this person is allowed to send me all these negative texts every day. Like, okay, I can block that. This person is allowed to yell at me or treat me whatever way. No, they're not allowed to actually do that. I can confront it. I can, everyone's scared to lose a job. And especially when you're interning or at an early phase where you need them, that's kind of one of the hardest places to be when you need the job. Like the best place to be is when the job needs you. But when you need the job, that's a hard place to be, because it's like, well, I don't want my first position to not have, good results, good recommendations. I don't want, the first people early in my career to kind of like botch my reputation at all, because that's going to make it harder for me moving on to even move into something different, it's like, if it was hard enough getting into the first placement, imagine how hard it might be potentially the second time. But also it's like a toss up between like, is it worth sticking it out in a place that's doing current damage that might lead to some kind of longer term or permanent damage? Is it worth staying in those situations or trying to find something new? And that is usually the conundrum that we kind of deal with, because there usually are other options. It's just, if the job doesn't need you and you're replaceable at that point, if you're not well trained, you haven't made them any money, you're not proving that you're an asset to them, like, you haven't had a chance to even prove that yet, like, you don't want to screw up. It's good to not screw up at that point. So it can make a person feel kind of stuck. And, but when we do break the agreements and start doing things our own way, the way that works best for us, that's more loving towards us and not letting other people kind of pound us down or expect all these things from us that maybe, even if it's something as small as like, oh, respond to my text, respond to my phone calls, respond to my WhatsApp messages. And like, sometimes I have people like that in my life. I've got family in all kinds of countries that, I don't use WhatsApp. I literally use it for family members, so I don't check it every day. Just like TikTok, I'm not on there like that. Like, if I want to go into WhatsApp, I have to literally go into it. Usually it's in the cloud, and so I have to like load it again and then go in and check my messages. Like, I don't get the alerts. I don't want the alerts. I already have alerts on my texts and on my emails. I don't need alerts from WhatsApp and alerts from every single thing. Like, it's too much for me. Like, most of my emails are junk anyways. Half of my texts are not really people that I know. And so it's like, why would I want more information coming from people that I don't even really talk to on a regular basis? It's like, I don't want to be in their messages or have like all their posts and like, oh, this person went to some random, third cousin's family's neighbor's wedding and posted a bunch of pictures and now everybody's commenting on it. I don't want to be in a group like that. It's like, it's just too much. Like, like, I'm focused on what I'm doing locally. I'm not so focused on like all these other family members. And it's not even like a negative thing, but it's like, sometimes it gets out of hand. I have people calling that, they try to establish a relationship when they invite me to do something. But it's kind of like, okay, I see now that you're calling me, even though we haven't spoken in over like 30 something years, since I was like 5 or something. We haven't really spoken, and I'm going on 40. So it's like, okay, like, where were you? Like, it goes both ways. I didn't contact them, but they also didn't contact me. And now it's like, oh, they want me to like go to this family function. So now they're going to start talking to me all of a sudden because, I'm part of the numbers, or like they invited me, and like, whatever it may mean for them. And it's like, maybe they do want a genuine relationship, but it seems like it's on their terms. It's like this person or these people didn't really seem to want a relationship until they wanted me to come to some event. And so it's kind of like, okay. But it's also like, do I need to get offended by that? It's like, cool, I get to take a trip. But also it's like, am I going to talk to them even after? Like, for me, it's like, why am I going to like develop a relationship with people that I don't have a relationship with? Like, I don't have energy to be like talking to random people. Like, to me, it's a random person. Like, even if you're a blood relative, I have a huge family. There's plenty of people I don't know. Like, you could put them in a crowd of people of the same race, and I probably might not be able to pick out a lot of them in a crowd. Like, I've got a lot of family like that, and a lot of these people have been very absent in my life, and it's fine, because I was absent in theirs too. And just having a huge family like that, it's like, okay, like, so yeah, that gets a little bit annoying to me though. Like, I try not to be too negative about it, but it does get annoying. I do get annoyed. I get annoyed that people want to, do stuff like that. But also, on the bright side, it could be a lot of fun. I like meeting new people and stuff, but I'm a little bit cautious. When people are starting to ask too much, sometimes people ask too much, and then, you give them an inch, they take a mile. The next thing you know, they're kind of like trying to manipulate you. Okay, if you go into one event and now that you have a passport and you can go, what's the excuse for not going to the next one? What's the excuse for not going to the next one? And it's like, well, I have every right to not want to go. I have every right to not want to take a 17-hour flight costing me thousands of dollars to go overseas somewhere to go do something with people that I never really talk to. I have every right to not want to do that, right? I like to travel, I like to meet people and stuff like that, but I'm not really trying to invest too much in brand new relationships with people that I don't really know. Like, usually for me, I'm like, if there's certain people who seem like they're taking a backseat to other certain people, I'm a little bit like, okay, if you're kind of taking a you know, if I have other family members that aren't really engaging with a certain person, then I'm kind of like, well, why is that? Like, they might know something more than I do. Um, and, I'm a little bit weary about, like, just jumping in full force. I've got plenty of family members that I'm like, ooh, I kind of wish I didn't really engage in conversation with this person and, like, share anything about my beliefs or anything, because now whenever I see them, they try to, like, throw it in my face or something. It's like, wow, like, this person's an ass. But, just because they're family doesn't mean they're going to be nice, or doesn't mean that they're going to be, a safe relationship to kind of develop. And I like to kind of figure that out on my own time and not have somebody kind of, okay, like, trying to seem like they want to get me to try to form a relationship with them in some isolated position where it's like I'm kind of forced to form a relationship if I've got people paying for my stuff or whatever it is, and kind of like, trying to prepare things for me like that. So I don't really know. Like, I'm kind of like, I'm not upset necessarily, but it's kind of like I kind of notice a lot of the agreements that I have in my life with people that, the first things that come to my mind are just different things like that. Like, things through work, things through, or past work anyways, things through just certain people I've had to deal with on a regular basis. And, I'm not saying these people are bad. I'm not saying there's anything terrible about them, but, there's people I've had to deal with that, I'm like, we're not really on the same page. And, I don't easily write people off. I give people chances. I don't expect anyone to be perfect, but at this time in my life, when I'm focused on my career and my own self and my own, professional life, I'm not really trying to focus on any other people. And I am kind of noticing some other people coming out of the woodworks, and it makes me kind of question, like, okay, we haven't really talked. Like, what are you doing here all of a sudden? You know? Like, it makes me a little skeptical. Like, what do you want? What's up? What do you want? Like, I don't have any money if that's what you're looking for. So, and I don't really think anyone's coming in that direction, like being like, oh yeah, let me have some cash or whatever. It's not like that. But, people seem to be wanting to spend a lot of time and energy on things. But I don't know. Part of me is like, oh, cool, And then another part of me is like, okay, like, I've kind of got my whole life, that, I'm not trying to, like, engage with too many people. I like to take things pretty slowly and learn what's what with somebody and let them kind of show their true colors. I don't really do the whole thing anymore where it's like, I gotta be, like, super trusting right off the bat, and, like, nah. I'm a little more cautious, especially in today's day and age with kind of how some people are. In all honesty, I feel like I need to be pretty cautious because there's a lot of people going through a lot of stuff right now. I'm not saying specifically family members, but in general, in the world, there's a lot of people going through a lot of stuff right now. And just because they're reaching out at this time, doesn't mean that they're going to be, after being, isolated for a few years or so, that doesn't necessarily mean that I should give them my time or owe them my time, or that it's a good idea to delve into these things with people, because I don't know what they've been up to for the past few years. Have they been building themselves? Have they been working on themselves? Have they been, experiencing a lot of trauma and a lot of stuff that they don't really, that they haven't really worked through, and they're trying to leech onto somebody else. Like, it's one thing to ask for support, but sometimes, people do weird manipulative stuff, and I'm very conscious of that, and I just try not to make it I try not to make it into too much of a problem. But yeah, so I'm still going to keep looking into these topics, but that's pretty much, next time I'll be starting on page 25, the first agreement. And so, all right, with that, thanks for listening.